Good morning, students. Students, today we will start with a poem in English. The name of the poem is Mr. Nobody. Now, Mr. Nobody is a poem whose poet is unknown. We don't know the name of the poet. The poem deals with many things that we never bother. That means we don't care about the things and live carelessly. So, through this poem, the poet tells us something that is true about our homes, what we do in our homes. When anything is broken or goes wrong, we said, no one has done it or I have not done it. We said it is done by someone else. Yes, right? We do this, right? So, first we'll start reciting the poem. Mr. Nobody. I know a funny little man, as quiet as a mouse, who does the mischief that is done in everybody's house. There's no one ever sees his face, and yet we all agree that every plate we break was cracked by Mr. Nobody. 'Tis he who always tears out books, who leaves the door ajar. He pulls the button from our shirts and scatters pins afar. That squeaking door will always squeak, for pretty, don't you see? We leave the oiling to be done by Mr. Nobody. The finger marks upon the door by none of us are made. We never leave the blinds unclosed to let the curtains fade. The ink we never spill, the boots that lying around you see are not our boots. They all belong to Mr. Nobody. So you can see that the author's name is not given. It's unknown. So now I'll explain to you stanza by stanza. The first stanza says, I know a funny little man as quiet as a mouse. So the poet is saying, I know there's a funny little man who's as quiet as a mouse. Now when you look at the mouse, you see that the mouse is very quiet. He keeps crawling here and there. So the poet is saying the same way, I know funny little mouse who's like, I know a funny little man who is like a mouse. So he says, who does the mischief that is done in everybody's house. Now we also do mischief. When we are small, we do mischief. When we break something, what do we say? Yes, I have not done it. You put the blame on someone else. So the same way the poet is saying, who does the mischief that is done in everybody's house. So mischief means we trouble someone or do it in a playful way. Okay, so that's done in everybody's house. It's not like that no one does mischief. Everyone does mischief. Then the next line he says, there's no one ever sees his face and yet we all agree. So the poet again says, we can't see his face. We can't see this person's face. But yet we all agree that he is there over here. Okay. Then the next line says that every plate we break was cracked by Mr. Nobody. Now sometimes by mistake. If there is a small child in your house or by mistake you break any plate from your hand, what do? We hide those pieces and we say we have not done. It's done by mistake. So the same way the poet is also trying to say us the same thing, that every plate we break was cracked. Cracked means broken by Mr. Nobody. We put the blame on someone else. Okay, and we say that I have not done. It's done by someone else. Then the poet is saying the same way. It's done by Mr. Nobody. Then next we'll move to the second stanza. 'Tis he always tears our book. Then he's saying there is someone who tears our books, tears out our book. You can see in the picture, the book is torn. So the poet is saying there is someone who tears out books. He also leaves the door ajar. Who leaves the door ajar means open. You can see over here the door is open. So he's saying there is a person who keeps the door open. He also pulls the button from our shirts. He pulls the button from our shirts so that no one will be able to wear the shirt again. So he says he's also pulling the button out of, pulls the button from our shirts, and he scatters pins afar. Scatters means he throws the pins everywhere. You know what are pins? You know, the small pins which we use. So he's saying he scatters pins everywhere. Then the next line says that squeaking door will always squeak. Squeak means making sound. Sometimes you see when you push your door, the doors which are there in your house, you push that door, it makes a sound. So that's called making. Squeaking means making sound. So he says that squeaking door will always squeak. For pretty, don't you see? We leave the oiling to be done by Mr. Nobody. So the poet is saying that squeaking door will always make that sound till you oil it. Now you see in the monsoon seasons what happens? When you on the gates also, if you don't oil the gates, what happens? It will become rusty. If you don't put oil, it will make that sound. So the poet is saying the same way, the squeaking door will always squeak, and we leave the oiling. When we have to put oil over there, we leave the oiling to be done by Mr. Nobody, because we feel lazy doing that. So we say someone else will do that, or Mr. Nobody will do it. Okay, so the poet is just saying about these things. So what he says in the second stanza, that he tears out books, he leaves the door open, he pulls the button from the shirt so that the person won't be able to wear the shirt again, and he scatters pins afar, and he also leaves the oiling to be done for the door. So what all things the poet is saying, that these things we also keep doing this at our homes, right? You must be knowing that these things we also do it at our homes. We'll go to the last stanza. The finger marks upon the door by none of us are made. Sometimes see, the finger marks are there on the door or on the mirror. So what happens? You look at that mirror, it looks very untidy or dirty. So what we should do, we should wipe. But we don't have that habit of wiping. We will say, let it be, someone else will do. So the finger marks upon the door by none of us are made. So if your parents or your mother ask, who has done those marks on the door? We will say, no, I have not done. Either you put the blame on your brother or sister, right? But you say, I have not done. The same way the poet is saying, the finger marks which are there on the door, that also we say that we have not done. Then the next line says, we never leaves the blind unclosed. So we never leaves the door or the windows unclosed. Okay, you should not keep it. To let the curtains fade. To let the curtains fade. See, sometimes when you keep the window open, what happens? The curtain starts flying. Right? You should never keep that window open. Keep it close. So the same way the poet is saying. The ink we never spill. You can see there's a ink bottle over here, and the ink is spilled. The ink is come out from the bottle. Spilled means it is spilled all around, where it is spread all around. So he says the ink we never spill. Now if you spill a bottle also by mistake, your hand has touched and the bottle falls, and you just run away from there, because the blame should not come on you. So we keep doing all these things, right? The poet is saying all these things. The boots that lying round you see are not our boots. Sometimes what do we do? When we come from school or when we come from out also, what do? We remove our shoes and throw it over there only in the house. But it's not good. We should keep it in the place where it has to be kept. Okay. So the poet is also saying that the boots that lying around you see are not our boots. Then what the poet is saying, the boots which are lying over there, it is ours, but we keep saying that is not our shoes, not our boots. Okay. They all belong to Mr. Nobody. So we keep telling that not our boot, that is someone else, that is my brothers or sisters, because we don't want to carry, we act lazy. Okay, so here what the poet is telling us, that we should not be lazy. Instead, whatever things has to be done, we have to see that we bother about the things and don't live it carelessly. We should not be careless. Okay, so here we end with this poem, Mr. Nobody. We will learn the next lesson in the next video. Thank you for listening, children. Goodbye. Take care.